Okay, I am going to do a lecture. This is chapter 1 for fraud. So let me go ahead and I'm going to start the slideshow. This happens to be one of my most favorite. I got to flip this over. My most favorite topics. As you all know, my dissertation for my doctorate was in the correlation of financial statement fraud and organizational culture. So I've been to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. I've been to their conference many, many times. Fortunately, I had to miss this past year's, but I plan on going in 2025. So let's go ahead and just jump into this, and let's talk about fraud. Let's talk about why it is so important to understand fraud and to be on the lookout for it. So the only thing that we can do to prevent fraud is eliminate the opportunities. Fraud triangle. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the seriousness of fraud. So if you go to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, you're going to find it's called a report to the nations. And basically, I think they say 5% of all gross revenue is lost to fraud. I want to say it's in the billions of dollars. The majority of instances is your lower level employees, your embezzlement type frauds or theft of stealing your inventory or whatnot. The frauds that have the highest financial loss happens to be your executive team. That's when you're going to see your financial statement fraud. So just some really cool kind of facts there. We're going to define fraud. We're going to talk about the different types of fraud. And we're going to understand the difference between fraud committed against an organization and fraud committed on behalf of an organization. So we should be able to understand the difference between criminal and civil laws. That's one of the things I love to do is I love to watch. YouTube is really great about this. You can go online and you can watch a number of court cases. There's a few of the laws, There's a few of the courts out there. One's in Michigan. I want to say his name is Cedric something, and he is he's one of the best one of the best judges I've seen. And I'm not talking Judge Judy type things. These are people that are overseeing criminal. They're overseeing a lot of, which is really sad, a lot of rent. People who haven't paid their rent and eviction process. So it's kind of interesting to kind of, watch these and see what's going on. Understand the different fraud fighting careers available today, and there's a lot. So fraud impact on one individual. It's a 68-year-old widow, fell in love with a man she met on a dating site. She never met him. Over subsequent months, the man repeatedly appealed for monetary help. She sent him more than $282,000. People tried to step up to the plate and tell her to stop, but she didn't. She didn't listen. She had fallen victim to a romance scam. They're attacking us from all areas. This is your grandma that this could be happening to. I get all kinds of emails saying, we need to verify your login. Please enter your information into this email. And it's a phishing scam. There's all kinds of them. I've had, and this sounds ridiculous, but I've had emails from someone who says they're watching what I'm doing here at work. And I've been watching inappropriate videos that involve boom shakalaka laka boom boom. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. It's what they're accusing me of, and that I have to send them so much in Bitcoin. Well, I know I'm not watching boom shakalaka laka boom boom on my work computer, and I think it's hilarious, and I don't even respond. I just delete them. So there's all kinds of ways. There's people calling you on the telephone. Um, I keep getting text messages saying, you forgot to sign this paperwork with some loan company. I didn't apply for a loan. So just interesting stuff. Okay, so the FBI arrested Bernie Madoff, largest single investment fraud in history. It was basically a Ponzi scheme. And so there was a person named Ponzi. That was their last name. And basically what he was doing was he was promising high returns on an investment. And so he would get people to invest, and then he would give them the high returns, but he would keep a lot of the money. So then how did he pay those high returns? Was because he was going to other people and getting their money to invest. And he was using, okay, so let's say the original investors, A's. So then he'd go out to the B's, he'd get their money, they'd invest, and he'd give it to the A's to say, see, look what I'm doing. And so they'd reinvest. And he just kept going and just making it bigger, 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 bigger. And there was no returns. He was just using people's money who invested into his scheme in order to pay the first people. So that's kind of what happens. It's awful, absolutely awful. I just think it's sad when people get so greedy to a point of this much deceit. I'm using the term scheme, but I want you guys to think about the term scheme. We think of it as its negative connotation, but back 100, 200 years ago, the term scheme was just, it wasn't meant to be something bad. It was an ideal of how to create a new investment. So oftentimes you heard, like in the olden days, you heard people say, oh, did you hear about this new scheme? Well, it was actually like selling stocks or something like that. It was not a negative. Now it is. So anyhow, so Bernie's in prison 150 years. Somehow or another, he's supposed to make 17 billion in restitution. That's not going to happen. Okay, so where's some statistics at? We love a little statistics. So you can go to the SEC because the SEC won't let me be. You all have heard me sing this before. So the SEC has the ability to go and prosecute individuals for fraud. And you can go check their website and you can watch to see like who's kind of what's happening, whose cases have been decided, yada, yada, yada. It does take, once they start investigating, it does take a number of years in order for it to go completely through the court system. Those who are whistleblowers oftentimes receive monetary rewards. And we're not talking little ones, we're talking millions. But again, this is years. And probably if they are a whistleblower, there is going to be some type of, they probably had some backlash, probably some bullying and whatnot from their fellow employees. I was researching fraud. Insurance companies. You could, we have an entire career out there. Certified fraud examiners, certified forensic accountants that will go and do the fraud research. Let's say that let's say Billy Bob Smith, and he's married to Jane Doe Smith, and they're getting a divorce. And Billy Bob has hidden a bunch of his money from his wife because he doesn't want to pay that much in alimony and he doesn't want to split up his assets. Well, Jane Doe Smith can hire a certified forensic accountant saying, I know there's money here somewhere and they're hiding it. And that forensic accountant can go and research and find out what happened to it. They oftentimes will provide evidence and testimony at trials. If you go onto my YouTube page, you'll see one of the YouTube's videos that I posted that I found interesting, which was it was Johnny Depp's trial with Amber Heard, and they brought in a forensic accountant who was testifying about Amber Heard's financial loss. So anyhow, they're relevant, they're important, and they have a lot of information. Okay. Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, ACFE.com. Okay. I'm a member. You can be a member too. It doesn't cost much for students. If you are interested in fraud, if this is something you want to pursue, I highly recommend that you become a member. I think it's $25 a month. In fact, now that I'm sitting here thinking about, maybe I'll go look and I'll put a link into the class. And here's the report to the nations they're talking about. The last one, I was going to say 5 billion, but I think they've got 2023's out, and I think it's closer to 5 billion. But you can see this is just what people are reporting. What aren't they reporting? That has a lot of really cool information in there. 5%, there's that 5% I told you about. Median loss is 117, average loss is 1783, $1.7 million, almost $1.8 million. Okay, so this is when we get into statistics. Average is, I take all of the figures and I put them together. Let's say that there's 10 figures or 10 groups of numbers, and then I divide it by that 10, and that gives me the average. The median means the exact middle between 50% of the figures on this side and 50% of the figures on that side. So they may kind of look the same, they may sound the same, but they're different in terms of statistics. So I just want you guys to be aware of that. That's why that kind of sounds a little funny, like, wait a second, they're talking about median and then they're talking about average. So you can see that when you're on this side with these huge monster financial losses, there's a bunch of them over here, which takes that average and makes it come over here a little bit more than the median, which is the exact middle. Here's a bunch of little ones, then over here is a bunch of big ones, but these big ones are so big, they kind of overwhelm these little ones. So that's what happens. Okay. Fraud does increase what we pay. I don't know how much Walmart marks up their products because they know people are walking out the door stealing it. Again, I watch a lot of YouTube, and they are now putting police body cameras. They're doing the public, what is that? Freedom of Information Act, and they're getting the body cam footage and they're making videos. And so you'll see an arrest from start to finish. A lot of them are at Walmart or Target. I don't know why, but maybe that's why Target is closing some of its locations. Where was I? Oh, I was in Phoenix. Kind of in downtown. We were going out to eat and we were leaving downtown Phoenix, just dropped off my son at the airport. So we came around this way, was going down towards Chandler, and we had to stop because I wanted an ice chest because we bought a bunch of, so we bought a bunch of stuff that was perishable. So I needed an ice chest to put it in and put some ice on top of it. And so we stopped at a Walmart. And that Walmart, you weren't allowed to bring in any backpacks, any large purses, nothing. And they had armed security at the Walmart and an active police force. And I was like, did I just go to the wrong side of the town? I'm on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. But they just said it's just a high crime area. And there was a lot of homelessness. And it wasn't the best neighborhood. So it was just kind of scary. So, think about all that money they had to spend just so people wouldn't steal from them. Okay. So for every dollar of fraud, net income is reduced by $1. Of course, you're gonna have to have more revenue. That's just obvious. We're accountants. That's just, yeah, I get that. Okay, seriousness of the fraud. It's huge. I mean, when we're looking at billions of dollars of loss in our economy, that is a huge impact. Um, it's just really, really scary. And it's not just people embezzling money or stealing the inventory. It's financial statement fraud. And we'll look at that later in the semester and we'll see that it still goes on. Okay. Even with legislation that's been passed in order to prevent it, it still continues. Here we go. Country A has a gross domestic product of 100 billion and a profit margin of 10%. If they lose $1 billion annually to fraud, how much additional revenue must a country generate to account for the fraud? What's the percentage? And then here's country B, 10 billion, profit margin of 5%. And so let's check that out. Okay. They must generate 10 billion, 10% to offset the loss. The revenue represents 10%, and then here's the 5%. So that's probably going to be 20 million to offset the loss. It's just hard. So what is fraud? So it's kind of, now that I look at that, that's kind of hard to explain. Basically, it's people that are using some type of deception in order to gain something that they weren't entitled to. I like that one. Let's write that one down. We're going to say Duke's definition. Deception in order to gain something they're not entitled to, which is really sad. It's not robbery because there's no physical force. It's not an unintentional error. It's not a mistake. People make mistakes. You all have probably heard of the time when my friend, my bestie, this is when she was living here in Yuma. And this was a long time ago. This is in the early 90s. She called me up and she's like freaking out because there's like $20,000 in her bank account. And so we were single moms, single moms, we don't have 20,000 extra in our bank account. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've got 20. What should I do? And I said, well, did you contact the bank? She said, yes. I said, make sure you just keep contacting the bank and write down every time you contact the bank. And I said, don't touch the money. And so she's like, yeah. So both of us, we think very much alike. We laugh because we start talking and we realize that both of us manage our personal bills is almost the exact same way. We have a lot of the same viewpoints when it comes to accounting and business. She's also in accounting. And so she had some friends that said, well, take that money out. Hurry up and go get that money and go shopping. Go buy yourself a new car. Go do this, go do that. Well, it was a mistake. It was a mistake on the bank. It was a mistake on the bank's part. And she was not entitled to that money. And we can't gain off somebody's mistake. So that was an unintentional error. They didn't mean to make the mistake. They corrected the mistake. So, that's not fraud. Okay. So here's some elements of fraud. Representation. There's a material point that is false and intentionally or recklessly it is believed and acted upon by the victim to the victim's damage. Okay. Charles Ponzi. Here we go. I told you there was a real man named Ponzi. Okay, so basically 1903 started a scheme involving postal coupons, same thing. He goes and he starts selling them to this level of customer right here at A, the investors. And then he gets some more investors down here, B. He's using B's money to A's money, he's funding his own little fun and games. B's money, he's funding his own little fun and games, and he's paying a little bit to group A. Then he goes and gets C, and it just keeps going. So Ponzi did have some legal action. He was arrested and went to jail. Okay. So just always be really, really careful. I always see it in like the telenovas that somebody comes in and, I have to borrow all this money because my boyfriend's aunt's uncle says that I can have a return on my investment. They talk their moms and dads into investing in them in this scheme. And it ends up it was it was a fake one, and there was no money to be had, and everybody lost all their money. So there are numbers of instances where that has happened. There's neighbors that have had their best friend's son say, hey, look, invest in this because I'm going to be doing this and this and this in my restaurant and I want to expand. And they go and invest, and the kid never expanded. There's also that stupid kid. What was it called? Oh my gosh, it was called something, and I can't, his name is Billy McFarland. And he was putting on some type of concert, kind of like Coachella, but it was over on the other side of the continent. And I think it was over in like the Caribbean islands, some Caribbean island that was no longer being used. And he was promoting this concert, yada yada yada. People all spent money to go to this concert, and they showed up, and there was no concert. Well, and I haven't met Billy McFarland, but I was at a conference, and he zoomed in, and he was one of the guest speakers, and he was the last one of the conference. And they do that on purpose because they're trying to get us. And I'm telling you, after he got done speaking, I was ready to invest. I mean, he was a nice looking man. He was articulate. He seemed genuine. I was like, oh, the poor baby just didn't know how to do his accounting. Oh, the poor baby. And then I started thinking, really, Chris, you need to be a little bit more, skeptical. So then I started researching Billy McFarland. This was not the first scheme that he got in trouble with. This was not his first investment scam. I think it was like his third, and he's working on number 4 right now. So Billy McFarland got in trouble for one scam, and then he was in the middle of the criminal process, and he did another one right in the middle. And he did, he went on to probation and stuff like this. But this last one with this music festival, that one sent him to prison. So confidence is essential for fraud. I'm telling you, if you saw Billy McFarland, I don't believe anybody. I believe Billy McFarland. I did. He was charming. Like I said, he was handsome, well put together, articulate. And I would have fallen for a scam too. Of course, I always take a step back and I think about things, but still, it's kind of scary, huh? So suppose I wanted to con a bank teller. Which of the 2 outfits would I wear? Outfit 1 is business suit, similar to the ones worn by the bank's typical successful clients, or well-worn coveralls and boots typically worn by manual laborers. Outfit number 1, right there. Because I want to give them the impression that I'm a business person and I'm articulate. I know what I'm doing. I'm all about the business. I'm all about capitalism. I have a sense of authority. I want to give them that type of impression. Now here's something for you. So again, me and my YouTube, I watched this one YouTuber, and he was an attorney, and he's a Black attorney. Not trying to give him a race or anything, but I have to because that's part of the story. He worked with a company, and they would cut checks to people for whatever reason. I don't know I can't remember what the reason was. And so people would take them to the bank and cash them. Well, it happened that they cut checks all the time. And the only people this one bank teller would stop and then call the company and say, is this a valid check? Was people of color. All the white people, they didn't think anything about. They didn't call on them. And so that attorney chewed them out and called them for the racism. So unfortunately, it still happens. And unfortunately, that well-worn coveralls and boots could be one of our farmers here. And our farmers make a whole lot of money in this community. So just think about that. Here's another one. And, this is something I've observed. Okay, I've got a bad habit. I normally only fly to Wichita because I have family. I got my grandbabies and my daughter in Kansas. So I fly there quite often. In fact, I've flown there like 2 or 3 times this past year. Probably more like 3 or 4, but anyhow. And I'm going to be flying there sometime this fall, and then I'm going to be flying my daughter and the grandbabies back in December. And I like seeing my grandbabies because I don't get to see them on a regular basis. So I pay the extra money and I go sit in first class. I like the seats that are by themselves. And there's a couple of benefits I like there. And I'm going to tell you, it's like $200 or $300 more. And that may sound like a lot, but when you start thinking about everything, you kind of wonder, is it really that much more? So I pay the money. I get to get on first. I get to put my bags away first. I get a big old seat. Okay. So I'm a happy little camper. Usually I'm sitting the way they have it. It's a 1-2 configuration. So usually I'm sitting by myself, all by myself. So I can snore, I can drool, I can do whatever I want. I get on board. Oh, wait, before I even get on board, I get 2 bags for free. That's like $100 right there that I'm not paying for my baggage. So you got to think about this. Then I get on board, and if I'm doing the Yuma to Dallas, they ask me what drink would I like. So all the alcohol you'd want, don't get drunk, but you get all the drinks you want, all the snacks you want, and they feed you. To me, it's worth it. So I found that when I dress up and look really cute, my makeup's all done, and I got my jewelry on, I get treated a whole lot better than if I just showed up in my sweats and a tank top. I get treated so much better. I mean, because sometimes I'll just wear stretch pants and just a long shirt, just because I just want to be comfortable, and tennis shoes. And I was treated better when I'm dressed all prissy and looking like I'm getting ready to go to a business meeting, or like I'm some stay-at-home mom with a rich doctor husband. Sorry, it's society that happens. So 2 main distinctions. Fraud is committed against organizations on behalf of organizations. So occupational fraud. So there's a couple things with occupational fraud. You have the asset misappropriation, you have corruption, and you have your actual financial statement fraud. So those are your occupational frauds. Okay. Look, I remembered. Woo! Okay. That's asset misappropriations is when somebody's stealing from you. That's when your inventory grows legs and they get up and walk away. When the cash just disappears, where did it go? Nobody knows. That's your asset misappropriations. That's normally where you're going to find the majority of your fraud. That's where that's happening. People stealing from you, embezzling money. Corruption is the bribery. Fraudulent financial statements is your CEOs, your executive team that are making falsified statements on their financial statements in order to manipulate the market. Okay, here we go. Where the company is a victim, employee embezzlement, vendor fraud, customer fraud. Normally that vendor fraud and the customer fraud are hand in hand with some employee fraud. That's normally how that happens. Management frauds is where the victims are the shareholders or debt holders of the organizations. That's your financial statement fraud. Investment scams, again, financial statement fraud, and that's going to be your consumers. And then there's also miscellaneous. Okay, so here's types of frauds, and you guys can read that on your own. I don't have to read that to you. Pretty self-explanatory. Employee embezzlement. Make sure you have your policies and procedures in place. Let's talk about the fraud triangle. So, what do we have on the fraud triangle? I've talked to you about this in financial accounting. So, you've got opportunity, you got pressure. Yeah, pressure, opportunity. There's one more in there, and rationalization. There we go. It's summertime. My brain is fried. The only thing you cannot, or the only thing that you have control over in that fraud, everything is very personalized against the fraudster. The rationalization and the pressure belong to the fraudster. That's in their court. The only thing you can prevent is that opportunity. So you eliminate the opportunity, you're going to eliminate the frauds. So that's why it's so important for you to create appropriate policies and procedures. So you got direct embezzlement, and then you got indirect, which is the kickbacks. So interesting stuff, I know. Double check. I want to make sure I'm recording. I am. Good. Okay. Just wanted to double check. Okay, come on. Got to talk to your. Okay. In each of these cases, determine whether the embezzlement was direct or indirect. Here we go. We got new home construction and older home remodeling. In spite having a large market share, they struggle to make a profit. Investigations showed that CVC employees were using company supplies and equipment to do their own remodeling jobs. Okay, here, okay, so that's going to be direct. Number one is direct, and number two is going to be indirect because they're getting a kickback. So maybe, yeah, there we go. Okay, two common forms of fraud. I'm going to say vendors acting alone. It's very rare. Most of the time it's between the buyers and the vendors. You're going to have an employee in there and the vendor, and they're going to be in collaboration. So you can see that right there. Department of Defense, because they don't check everything. A lot of your governments, they have issues with this. Types of customers do not pay for goods. They walk out the door. They pay too little. They get something for nothing. Customers deceive organizations into giving them something they should not have. Example fraud involving a bank in Chicago. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm sure it was something interesting. I've seen cases on YouTube where people are switching up boxes. So they like put a more expensive printer into a cheaper printer box and flip them out. Or they return goods in order to get a refund, and somebody doesn't check the box and they put it back on the shelf, and somebody comes in, buys it, and they find a bunch of rocks in the box or something like that. That has happened. I'm seeing it with shipping companies as well. You may order something and then they send you a box and it's full of stuff you didn't even think about ordering. It happened to me one time, and I threw a big old huge temper tantrum because I am very sure that somebody opened the box, and I mean it was so bad. It was bad. And it was like they just took their trash and threw it in there and mailed it to me and tried to say that I got my goods. Okay, financial statement fraud. There's hundreds of these. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. These are just a couple of them. And so they're misstating their financial statements, and they're doing it. They're trying to overstate their assets. They're trying to hide the fact that they don't have much revenue, or so basically they're overstating their revenue or understating their expenses. They're doing some, you got the fair market value. Maybe they're manipulating that. Maybe they're manipulating the timing of expenses and revenue. It's financial statement fraud, and it's happened. You can see that those are very classic companies that have fraud. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies. Investment. Oh, romance and payday loan scams. Yeah, I never ever take advantage of those. Come, we're going to give you a free dinner. If you come and listen to our 20-minute, we're not going to let you out the door until you invest with us scam. I don't know if that's what really happens. Usually they're selling timeshares or something stupid like that. But I'm not even going to get into it. Money is taken from unsuspecting individuals involving a fictitious pretense, common internet scams, right there. Student loan forgiveness scams, one-time password bot scams, employment scams. Seen cases where people are offered employment and they're like, well, come to this interview. And then they bring in and it's like a mass interview with people. And then they say, hey, in order to get out, you can go door to door and sell our products. And you need to buy your first set of knives, you know. So anyhow, it's just a scam. So beware. Common consumer fraud, Ponzi, pyramid. Pyramid schemes are very similar to multi-level marketing. Multi-level marketing are not fraudulent, but they're bordering into that pyramid scheme. Okay, so be careful. I love my Mary Kay. You know, some people make a lot of money, others don't, but that is a multi-level marketing company. There's some other ones out there, Pampered Chef. Oh, yeah, don't get me started on Pampered Chef. I love Pampered Chef. In fact, I'm getting ready to go call my friend to see if she's still selling Pampered Chef so I can buy some more knives. But be really careful. Know what you're getting into. Telemarketing, Nigerian. Okay, we all know there's a Nigerian prince with my name on it. You know, they're always, I'm related, even though I have the DNA report saying that I'm not. They want to wire me a bunch of money and then they need me to wire it back. That's how they get you. Okay. Identity theft, advance fee, redemption, strawman bond fraud. I've never heard of this before, so I'm just kind of looking at it. Perpetrators claim that the U.S. government controls certain bank accounts to which victims can gain access if they purchase expensive training kits. Kind of like sounds like some of these weight loss scams. Every time I turn around, I'm seeing advertising for weight loss. And then you go, or it says, hey, check to see what clothing looks best on you for your body's type. And then the next thing you know, they want you to subscribe to some subscription service. Internet fraud. Oh gosh, it's all over the place. Be so careful. Just be careful. Okay. Determine if the fraud is likely and if so, what type. Friend tells you about a business opportunity with a startup company in a foreign country. 200%. Oh, get rid of that. Oh, no. Yeah. No. Yeah. Put that friend on your frenemies list. You read an advertisement in a local paper in which the seller is offering a piece of used furniture for 50% off the comparable new price. That sounds, I've seen that. I would check to see if it's not stolen. Receive an email regarding a business deal involving a money transfer of 22 million from a dormant bank account. That's fraud. Okay. So you can see, I called it. Impact on national economics. 1920s, Great Depression. People were jumping out the windows because they lost so much money. The entitlement acts that were passed in order to protect people from such extreme poverty situation. So we also had the excessive and fraudulent speculation, U.S. Savings and loan, 1980s, 1990s. Let's come up to the 2005s, 2008s. Okay, led to a deep recession. Home loans offered to non-creditworthy buyers. So what? Okay, So what was happening? This is with the Dodd-Frank Act of 2009. It's supposed to try to help eliminate it. So the government told the underwriters, loosen up the strings. And so banks were lending money on a there's two a variable fixed or variable rate, financial rate. So your interest rate was variable instead of fixed. And so what would happen is that as the rate goes up, so does your mortgage rate. Okay, the interest you're paying on it. As it goes down, the interest that you're paying on the loan goes down. So they were selling these loan products to people who did not qualify. And they were giving them this adjustable rate mortgage. That's what it's called, variable rate mortgage. And they gave them 5 years. And then in 5 years, they had to refinance and get out of that loan. Well, there was so much of it going on that by the time 5 years, they may have lost their job or their income source went down by quite a bit, and they didn't qualify for any other loans. And so they lost their homes. So it was awful, absolutely awful. And it was all because the banks lent money to people who were not creditworthy. Not to say that they were bad people. Their credit was not at a point where they should have been able to afford a home, or they could handle that type of mortgage payment. Okay. So you can prosecute both criminally and civilly. Sarbanes-Oxley allows for the criminal prosecution of your executive team. There's two different ways, two different things to think about. Let me do it that way. Civil, preponderance of your evidence. It's more than likely that this happened, okay? Preponderance of evidence. Criminal, beyond a reasonable doubt. So this one, it's more likely than not that it happened. Criminal, you have beyond a reasonable doubt that it happened. So there's two types of ways to think about that. So your civil, preponderance of evidence, and your criminal is beyond a reasonable doubt. That determines which way you're going to go. Okay. Okay, criminal. Here, right down there, beyond a reasonable doubt. They serve jail time, they pay fees. Here we go. Recent. CEO of Financial News Network, spinning companies he controlled in a plot to inflate reported sales. Create this Towers Financial Ponzi scheme. Raj, I cannot. Insider trading. Civil. Preponderance of the evidence. I love it. So oftentimes they're just heard by a judge. You don't need a unanimous verdict, just needs to kind of, more likely than not that it happened. And then they can have civil penalties attributed to them. Okay. Distinctions. Purpose to right a wrong, civil case to obtain a remedy. And so you can kind of see what's happening right there. Jury must have 12, may consist of fewer than 12. Determination by a grand jury that, this is for criminal, that there could have been a crime that was committed. In civil case, you just have to file a claim. Verdict has to be unanimous. You can have it less than unanimous. Okay, criminal case is one at a time, and then you can put a bunch of them on a civil case. Like, let's say you can have a bunch of people come together and file a claim against a company if they feel like they've been wronged. Like the Camp Lejeune case, I keep getting those emails too. And talc powder, it's like, yeah, that would be like everybody in the United States. Okay, which of the following statements is true? When fraud is committed, civil litigation proceeds first, followed by criminal. Purpose of a civil case is to right a wrong. The burden of proof in a criminal case must be beyond a reasonable doubt. In criminal cases, various claims may be joined in one action. Civil cases are initiated by a plaintiff filing a claim. And the one that, which of the following statements is true? Well, I can tell you right now, number 3 is true. The purpose of a civil case is to right a wrong. And we can come back here. That's under criminal case. When fraud is committed, civil litigation proceeds first, followed by criminal. That's not necessarily true. We know that one's wrong. Civil cases are initiated by the plaintiff. Okay. This is very true. There are increasing universities that are becoming very active in creating a bachelor's degree in fraud. Okay. You'll need analytical skills. You need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to have technology. You're also going to have to be able to use statistical analysis, like Benford's Law. Benford's Law basically says if you see a trend in these numbers, that's more than likely not ever going to happen. And what's the statistical likelihood of it always being ending in 5 or it always ending in 0? That's pretty much not going to happen when it comes to financial statements. And they have computer programs that'll do that for you. But that's Benford's Law. You can, one time I had to find something, and this wasn't fraud. This was just me. There was something wrong. And I couldn't figure out why on earth the control account did not balance with the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger. So I had to go back through years of data and look everything up. And then I found it. Somebody had journaled a large journal into the control account, but didn't go through the subsidiary ledger. And so that made my accounts receivable all wackadoodle. And when I found it, I was able to correct it and come up with a matching subsidiary ledger number. But it took me months to research it. So how to prepare a fraud fighting professional. Well, you got to understand audit. So you need to be able to audit. You need to be able to read your numbers, okay? You need to be able to look at something and say, that trend doesn't look right. Okay, that's me. So you need an understanding of accounting and business, knowledge of civil and criminal laws, criminology, privacy issues, employee rights, fraud statutes, and other legal fraud related issues. So you're going to have a lot of legal experience. You can get this on the job, just FYI. An FBI, CIA, Secret Service agent has a business degree, and then they went on and pursued their fraud certifications. Okay, the ability to speak and write in a foreign language, whatever. That one's kind of iffy. Knowledge of human behavior, yeah. I wish I'd known about fraud a long time ago when I was first starting. I wish I knew a long time ago how much I loved accounting and how much I loved sociology. I would have eaten this up if I could have found a degree that dealt with this, because this would have been my career choice. I love trying to understand why people behave the way they do. Why do they do what they do? So I find it fascinating. Here's the certified fraud examiners. That's with the ACFE. You have to have a bachelor's degree. You got to be a member. You've got to have 2 years underneath another CFE. You need to have like so much education. You have to have work experience. It's 2 years. You have to pass an exam. Okay. And then you have to adhere to the code of ethics, and you also have to continue your continuing ed. Okay, bachelor's degree. You can substitute, no field of study is required. You got to study really hard for that exam. Okay, CFE, you need to have accounting and auditing, criminology, sociology, fraud investigation, loss prevention, and law. Okay. The four primary areas of the fraud examination is financial transactions and fraud schemes, law investigation, fraud prevention, and deterrence. There's 500 questions. Takes 10 hours to complete. Divided into 4 sections of 125. Each section can be completed in a different setting. You need to do it within 30 days. Here we go. I just mentioned CIA, FBI. I actually had, and this was about 6, 7 years ago, an FBI agent who worked on the Enron case, and he was a certified forensic accountant, and he came in and spoke to the class. CPA firms, a lot of them. When I go up to the fraud convention, you know, all the fraudsters, we all go up there. The majority are government employees. And then there's a lot of people that are in private practice. Those people in private practice make buck. Okay? Just telling you, there's money to be had there. And so you can kind of see what's going on there. And self-assessment. The victims of Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme range from lower to middle class to the very wealthy. What parts of his personality? Okay, he was very personal. He was engaging. He had a sense of, he knew what he was talking about, and he was successful. This can calculate the return on investment for money spent on fraud protection. Well, what they can do is they can look at that money that they've spent. They can look at the assumption that 5% of their revenue would be lost to fraud, and then they can look at the money that they spent on it, and if it's less than the 5%, they can do it that way. And multidisciplinary skills, because there's so much that goes into fraud. Technology. Why do people commit fraud? And we'll get into some of the theories behind that a little bit later. There's mice, there's the diamond, there's another fraud one out there that the fraud diamond is the fraud triangle, but it adds capability. And then there's the pentagon. I think they got a pentagon out there now. There's mice. There's this fraud scale. There's white collar crime theory. There's a lot of theories out there. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and end this. And welcome to class. Oh, I forgot to make a comment. Okay, Bernie Madoff, the way he behaved. Okay, Richard Scrushy, you guys have heard me talk about him. And I told you that I went to a conference where they had, the previous month, they had brought in Richard Scrushy, who ran Health South. He was the CEO of Health South when it went, when it got caught with all the fraud. And he was the one that caused all the fraud. And he was the first CEO tried under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. He went and blamed it on his management team. His management team took the fall. He got off. Then a couple months later, he was convicted of trying to bribe the governor of Alabama, because why not? The way they described him, that he was personable, he was engaging, he was attentive. He had a certain air about him. He was very, he kind of pulled you into his world, and thoughtful, kind, nice, all that kind of stuff. Well, they're sitting there describing him, talking about how amazing this man is. And I'm like looking at him, and I know I'm not the only one looking at him kind of funky. And I was just like, I've had it. I don't want to listen to this crap about Richard Scrushy. He caused billions of dollars of losses for Health South and cost a lot of people their jobs. And so I raised my hand and I said, really? He didn't do it, huh? I said, so what's his excuse for bribing the governor of Alabama? And everybody in the room busted up laughing because I popped off with that, because we all knew he's a fraudster. And then the guy who was speaking about him started laughing, and he was like, well, and I'm like, yeah, that's not cool, dude. Not cool. So anyhow, there's my comments on my last bit. Okay, I better let this finish so that I can post this up there for the first week of class. Welcome to class. I'm so excited. You're going to love this topic. It's so interesting. It's so fascinating. You're just going to love it.